The Federal Reserve was created by Congress in 1913, and it was entrusted with the power granted originally to the Congress by the U.S. Constitution to coin money and regulate the value thereof.
One myth that's out there is that what we're doing is printing money. We're not printing money. So to lend to a bank, we simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account that they have with the Fed. So it's much more akin, although not exactly the same, but it's much more akin to printing money than it is to borrowing.
You've been printing money.
They just enter something on a computer. Oh, you need 20 billion today. Here's 20 billion, but they got that out of thin air. It came out of thin air, it goes to the Treasury then pays the bills.
What we're doing is lowering interest rates by buying Treasury securities. And by lowering interest rates, we hope to stimulate the economy to grow faster. So the trick is to find the appropriate moment when to begin to unwind this policy.
There are only 2 times in the history where we had debt crises in which interest rates hit 0. And in both of those times, the central bank had to print money and go to a different type of monetary policy, which we call quantitative easing, and to buy financial assets. So it's caused asset prices to rise. That process creates a gap between the rich and the poor.
The gap between rich and poor in this country has never been greater. Can you act quickly enough to prevent inflation from getting out of control?
We've been very, very clear that we will not allow inflation to rise above 2% or less.
This argument that prices are going up about 2%, nobody believes it. You know, and the old CPI says prices are going up at 9%, so they believe this. If people on fixed incomes, they're really hurting. The middle class is really hurting because their inflation rate is very much higher than the government tries to tell them.
In the panic of '08, the Fed put up $3.3 trillion. And just this past week, the Fed revealed who got that emergency help. It turns out there were 21,000 transactions to financial firms including Citigroup, Morgan Stanley, and Goldman Sachs.
We are leaving the era of a free market capitalist system in America. We're entering neo-feudalism. So there'll be a few private equity funds, a few hedge funds, and a few mega corporations will own 95% of all the equity, and everyone else will be essentially serfs.
You have what degree of confidence in your ability to control this?
100%.
The Federal Reserve, set up by banking architect Paul Warburg, is a European-style central bank, complete with all the inherent problems of the old world. Banking principles diametrically opposed by the founders. Alien concepts, such as backing money by debt instead of gold. Lending out more money than you have in the vault. Printing up money so banks can stimulate the very economy they just crashed. If the public better understood how fiat money can be abused by Congress, it would impeach almost every member and abolish the Federal Reserve Central Bank, as it has done twice in the nation's history.
History shows that one of the best things you can do to create a strong, stable economy is to have a strong central bank which is independent of political pressures.
Als we het hebben over die piramide, want we hadden het dus net over de structuur van de Bank of International Settlements in Basel. Dan heb je het over de IMF en de Wereldbank. Daaronder heb je het over al die centrale banken, dat is ook de Federal Reserve in Amerika en al die andere. Wat ze doen, dat is schuldcreaties binnen landen verwezenlijken op een manier dat het land het nooit meer terug kan betalen.
You get the idea, but the general gist of it is a conspiracy for a shadowy world government to take over in a totalitarian way control of all people living on Earth. Now, all of that stuff is nonsense.
Financial privacy, that's gone. The right to own property, that's essentially gone. So you have to get permission from the government from almost everything. And if that is the definition of a police state, that you can't do anything unless the government gives you permission, we're well on our way.
If you've not heard of these NWO, New World Order conspiracies, I actually congratulate you. You're probably living a great life away from the toxicity of this nonsense.
A new world order.
A new world order.
A new world order.
A new world order.
A new order for the centuries, for the ages, forever.
Interdependent world order might be built.
A framework for global governance.
Global governance and global agreements.
There's a need for a new world order.
World order, financial world order.
Maintaining world domination is based on an intellectually and financially bankrupt idea that generates dependency, war, loss of civil liberties, inflation, and debt, all of which contribute to our economic crisis.
The ultimate goal that these people have in mind is the goal to create a one world government run by the banking industry, run by the bankers. So through these bankers attempting to taking over America, knowing that America was the freest nation in the world, it was necessary for them to take away our gun rights, freedom to bear arms, and create a country where we become slaves, because once they take over America, the rest of the world becomes a lot easier for them. That's why they don't protect our borders. That's why we're losing our Constitution, the very document that secures our freedoms. You know, central banking is one of the major planks of the Communist Manifesto. We talk about America being a capitalistic country, but yet at the same time we have a central bank that plans everything for us. And the graduated income tax is another plank of the Communist Manifesto. And now you have this Federal Reserve System, which then in 1913 got the right to create money for the government. Now the government borrows money from them, and the government says, well, we have to pay these people interest. How are we going to pay them interest? Let's impose a tax on the labor of the American people, which never existed before, to pay the interest of the bankers. And through Social Security, they started deducting money out of your paycheck. Because people agreed to it because they thought it was going to their retirement fund. See, the IRS is a symptom of the problem. The real problem is the banking industry and the bankers in this country. Shut down the Federal Reserve System, and eventually you won't have to pay those taxes anymore. Now, if the American government made the money, backed by gold, which limited the amount they could make, you wouldn't have debt and you wouldn't have inflation. And if you want to win the battle to stop that, you have to deny them the ability to create money. Democracy equals New World Order. Democracy equals slavery. The Founding Fathers hated the idea of a democracy. They thought it was the worst form of government there is, and I agree with them. We have to stop being scared. We have to stand up and do what's necessary to take back, to stop these bankers, these elite, this government full of lies, congressmen full of liars.